Hi everyone, it's Yvette Blowitz from SPAITGIRL.com and welcome to the SPAITGIRL Talk Show podcast. I'm super excited to be here with you today and with our very special guest, Jana Firestone, who is a therapist, the host of the Curious Life podcast, and the author of Embracing Change, Adjust, Transition, and Adapt. And she breaks down the factors that often make us so reluctant to pursue new goals, from core beliefs and anxiety to ego and imposter syndrome. And she offers us strategies through her book to help us adapt and thrive. So with her blend of professional advice, personal experience, and real-life stories, Embracing Change is a key to unlocking your potential. I really wanted to pick up this book because on the cover of Embracing Change, it says, a soothing, supportive therapy session in a book. Bryony Benjamin. Because we're on a mental health book podcast show, I want to welcome Jana Firestone.
Thanks so much for having me, Yvette. I'm so happy to be here.
I want to congratulate you on your brand new book, Embracing Change. How does it feel to go from therapist to podcast host to now published author? Your book is everywhere in major retailers like Big W right around Australia, major bookstores, online. You've just recorded your audio book as well. How does it feel?
It feels completely surreal, like seeing it in your hands and knowing you're in Queensland. And you sent me a picture before of the book in Cairns, and I'm all the way down in Melbourne. So it's completely surreal and really exciting.
It's so exciting, and it's even more exciting to support our Australian publishing houses. So we'll give Affirm Press a big shout out as well, and all of our bookstores who have got your book and retailers. Super grateful that we can all pick this book up during this ongoing pandemic and stress of life. Welcome our global audience. I'm so grateful that you're today joining Jana Firestone and myself. Before we dive into your book, are you happy to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
I have been a therapist for the last 16 years or so, and I spent the first half of those years working in intensive grief and trauma work. And the second part of it so far, I've been working in schools and in private practice and working with kids and teenagers and their families. It's been a really interesting career. I've had a lot of experience across the entire mental health spectrum. And when I was on maternity leave with my second child, I decided to try and find something else to do. I've been doing a bit of writing as well. So I was doing freelance writing, completely unrelated to the psychology world, just doing a bit of travel writing and reviews and opinion pieces. And I wanted to combine my therapeutic skills and my writing, my love of creating something. And so I just thought I'd try and start a podcast. And so 3 years ago, I just decided, all right, let's do it, with this little tiny baby, to my side, and Googling everything, how to upload a podcast, how to record one, all of that. And so I just got really busy doing that. I think I'm someone that just likes to try and keep growing and learning and doing new things all the time. So I love a new challenge, and the book is the latest in that succession of challenges, I suppose.
And I love in your book how you shared a lot of stories from authors you've actually interviewed of your guests, which was so incredible. Many who have written their own books as well and opened up about their own mental health struggles or grief or things that are affecting them. One of the things I found interesting in your book, and it really reminded me that you can't look at a photo on Instagram and know someone's backstory or know their journey. As an example, when you look at the Curious Life podcast photo of yourself, you're there and you probably would think you've had this really easy life. But then when I started reading your book, you open up about losing your mum at the age of 21. and
Yeah.
your own journey of grief. That must have
Mm.
been so difficult at such a young age to lose your mum.
Yeah, absolutely. It's your worst nightmare. And because we didn't have any warning, she hadn't been unwell, there was no period of illness. It was just completely out of the blue. And in fact, the night before, I'd been watching Sex and the City, and that was back when it was like live on air all that time ago. And it was the episode where Miranda's mum died. I was absolutely so moved and sad and really taken with the story. And I remember thinking, oh, I should ring my mum. I should ring mum, but it was a bit late. It was like 10 o'clock or something. I thought she wouldn't appreciate it. And then that's the night that she suddenly became unconscious. And the next day, basically, she was gone. So you sort of just go from normal life existence and taking everything for granted and taking the people you love for granted and your position in life and your safety and your security all completely for granted. And then just in an instant, it can be gone. And for a lot of people, when something like that happens, you can't move past it. And even within my own family, there are people that have been stuck in that place for a really long time and still finding it hard to move through. And I don't think it's something you ever get over. It's just something you have to learn to live with.
Must have been such a big shock at first, and then the realization that everybody's getting on with their life and the world keeps moving, and you're, hang on a minute, I've just lost my mum. Why is the world still moving?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the feeling. You're in this private world of hell, and there's not 1 minute that you're not aching and crying and feeling desperate and wishing there was some way to change what had happened. And then you step outside the front door, and as you say, the world just keeps turning. Turn on the TV, and everything, the news is still going, the world is still happening, and it's so jarring. You can't imagine that you could be feeling so completely off axis and like everything is different. But then, yeah, the rest of the world is as business as usual. So I think that can be really difficult for people because you can make you pretty angry. You can feel like it's unfair, and why am I going through this terrible experience and you're still living as if nothing has happened. It
Yeah.
does not rational at all, but it's a strange juxtaposition.
And the whole family falls apart because you're used to having your mum there to support you as a woman going into the world. And you must have had so many dreams and hopes of starting your own family and having her there as your support. That must be still difficult to this day when your kids have things on, or you're celebrating their birthday or your birthday even, or Christmas.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make. For me, it can come at any time. It doesn't even have to be a celebration necessarily, but I've got 2 little boys. I've got another one coming in 2 weeks. And it's the little things. There'll be a moment where something really sweet happens or funny, and my dad gets those phone calls and those texts all the time, and you definitely always have that piece missing, and you try to keep her alive for the kids and talk about her, but for them it's a sort of abstract concept, so I don't know how much they really understand at their age about her not being here. And my little one has asked me recently, but when's she going to be back? Is she going to be coming back? And I'm like, well, no, darling, she's not. And so you're sort of having these conversations at different stages of their development about big concepts around death and grief and what happens when we die. And I think it's also the tough moments when I'm really exhausted and I just need some help, and to just think that it would have been so easy to just give her a call and to have known that she would have just been there, and it wouldn't have been a fuss, it wouldn't have been a problem, she would have been able to help. So, yeah, there are great big holes in my life, even all these years later, almost, I think, 20 years later this year. It's something that's ever evolving.
And did you go through a period where you were beating yourself up? You mentioned that you were going to call your mum that evening, the night before she died. However, you thought it was a bit late and you thought, oh, well, I'll leave it till tomorrow. But did you ruminate over and over and think about, I wish I would have made the call? Because I hear this a lot from people, sadly, who either thought about calling a loved one but got too busy with work or said, oh, I'll do that next week. They weren't able to call them. They'd sadly lost their loved one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever we lose somebody, there's always regret. You're either regretting something you did say or did, or something you didn't do or didn't say. So, absolutely, I wish I'd picked up the phone and had one last conversation with her. And I know that for a lot of my clients that I've worked with, it's the same thing. There's that wishing that they had or hadn't done something. So I think it's really important to always make that call, have that conversation. For people that might have strained relationships with people, life is too short. You've just got to make the call, have the convo. If it's uncomfortable, be uncomfortable, but rather go through that and have the opportunity to say the things that you might want to say to someone, rather than miss out on the opportunity and spend the rest of your life wishing that you had.
And I think in the pandemic, one of the lessons I particularly learned was you never know when your goodbye with someone could be the last goodbye. If someone was experiencing grief right now, maybe they've lost a loved one and they're really in that black hole, really depressed, grieving. Are there any things they could do to try to help with the grief?
I think, first of all, it's really important to remember that everyone's grief journey is unique, and there's not always a one size fits all approach to this kind of thing. But I think it's important to listen to what's going on for you. And if you're feeling like it's overwhelming seeing the social media and seeing people having a great time, I hear this actually from people that might have lost a baby, and people are posting about baby celebrations or announcements, and that can be really hard. So making conscious choices about what you're taking in actually can help quite a bit. So maybe you have to mute a few of your friends on Instagram for a little while. You're not blocking them or turning them off, but you're just kind of having a break from their posts to give yourself a bit of space to heal, and ensuring as well that there's plenty of time for yourself in there. So if you need a day to be on the couch crying and miserable, take it. Don't feel like you have to get up and be part of the world because you quote unquote should be. You've just got to listen to your own body and listen to what you need, and try and implement as much of that self-care as possible, which again is going to look different for all of us. But if it's exercising, if it's taking yourself away into nature, doing something beautiful, spending time with loved ones, spending time on your own, finding the things that really work for you to give you that space and that time to just sort of start that healing process.
That is so beautiful, words of wisdom there. And when it comes to your book, Embracing Change, what is the meaning behind the book title?
Well, when we were putting the book together, I was looking at all of this kind of psychological concepts that hold us back from taking the leap in life. What are the things that stop us from moving forward? And the title just came from putting all of those pieces together and knowing that change is the only inevitable thing that is going to happen. We can be certain we're going to be experiencing change for the rest of our lives. Nothing stays the same. And if it did, it would be pretty boring, really. I mean, life is all about that colour, the darkness and the light, and the good parts and the bad. And so if we can all be a little bit more mindful of the things that sort of get in the way, sometimes without us even knowing and that stop us from taking those brave steps and trying something new, exploring a new passion, taking a new direction, changing a relationship, all of those things that seem really scary. Then if we can sort of look into what it is that's holding us back, then I think we can all live a more full life. So I wanted to share with readers some of my experiences about the things that have held me back personally in my life, and some of the experiences, as you said, of my podcast guests, and some of them are the most incredible people in Australia, people like Lane Beachley, 7-time world champion surfer. If she struggles with some of the things that we've been through and that we go through, I feel like that's just a way to help normalize our own human experiences and know that we can all get through all of these tough parts and the sticky parts of life, and try and, without sounding really cheesy, but try and live our best life.
And one of the things in your book, which I thought was really incredible, is you opened up about anxiety and also your own experience of experiencing anxiety when you were driving across the freeway and you could feel that anxiety in your body and all the sensations. Are you happy to share a little insight about anxiety, what it is, and how you personally felt it? Because some people think that therapists don't experience things like anxiety or depression or normal emotional responses.
A lot of my friends and colleagues who are therapists are probably the most anxious people or stressed people or people experiencing burnout or depression. And, you know, we're absolutely not immune to it. So, yes, I might be able to sit down with you and talk about what's going on for you and how we might be able to move through it. But applying it to ourselves is a completely different thing. So I might know it all and I could write a book about it, but I can't always apply it to myself. So for me, when I was writing the book, I was having some really intense anxiety. I don't know if it was exacerbated by what was going on with the pandemic. You know, being in Melbourne, we were basically locked down for 2 years. And all we were doing was gluing ourselves to the news every day. How many cases? What does this mean? What are the restrictions? To be limited to 5-kilometre radius around your home for as many months as we were, with a young family, not being able to see your family and friends. There was so much playing into all of our psyches that, you know, everything I think just got triggered. And so for me, driving, in fact, just prior to the pandemic that I had that particular episode where we were driving on the freeway and about to get onto the Westgate Bridge, which in Melbourne is scary.
I don't know if I'm even game to drive over it as a Queenslander.
Yeah, it's scary.
It's
and, you know, you've got trucks
Mm.
and huge trucks hurtling past you. So it's not the best fun.
No.
But, you know, for a brief time in my life, I lived on the other side of that bridge, and I was never as frightened going over it as I was during this episode, where I felt like I'd completely lost control of my body. I was almost out of my own body. I felt like my hands were on the steering wheel, but I had no control over them and no strength. It was the scariest feeling. And I had my 2 kids in the back seat, sleeping peacefully, and just having this overwhelming fear that I was going to lose control of the car and we were all going to die. And I thought I could keep on top of it as we were sort of coming down the freeway. I knew the bridge was coming and I knew that I could feel the anxiety building. My heart was racing. I was feeling quite lightheaded and faint. And all of those pieces together just completely put me into panic. And I had no idea what to do. So I pulled the car over to the side of the road in a very dangerous place that was right on the edge of where all the lanes were merging left and right to go onto the bridge, but I had no other choice. And we couldn't get out of the car. My partner and I couldn't get out of the car there and swap seats. It would have been incredibly dangerous. So I was just trying to control my breathing, calm myself down, bring my heart rate down, thinking that if I just bring the physiological response down, that will give me enough support from a psychological perspective to just make it over the bridge. And I thought I had calmed myself down enough to keep going, but I sort of, within seconds of starting the car again and continuing over the bridge, I was completely freaking out again. And so I crawled over the bridge and just made it to the other side. And I have to say, the response I had afterwards, when we finally got to a safe place to pull over and I could swap seats with my partner, he was like asking me if I was okay and checking in, and my hands were shaking. I was completely rattled for the rest of the drive and then exhausted for the rest of the day because it was such a huge physical toll. And I still to this day have never had an episode as extreme as that. And I did some therapy on it at the end of last year and did quite a few sessions on managing that driving anxiety. And it seems to have worked. So I'm in a much better place now. Certainly haven't had any episodes like that since then. So I'm a huge advocate for therapy, not just as a therapist, but as someone who also believes in it as a client.
Yeah,
So
wow. Thank you for sharing that story. I could truly resonate with that because there was a point in time when I used to live out in the country, farming kind of environment. So you obviously don't see a lot of cars and it's dirt roads. And then I had to go fly into Brisbane and then get a hire car and drive to the Gold Coast. And as you can imagine, I've gone from driving on a dirt road, no cars, just some cows, and very few people, very few cars. And then I could be driving for hours, not many cars. And then I go on this highway and it was hectic to the Gold Coast. I could feel my heart rate going and I was like, oh, it's so fast and busy. So you have that anxiety, panic attack, and it really takes over. And I think I must have been going at 40, like in 100 lane, and no wonder. Oh, it was a disaster.
Completely understand.
I'm a better driver since then. I like how you use therapy in order to overcome and figure out what went on that day and to get through. What I really love in your book is you go through things like perfectionism, core beliefs, anxiety, imposter syndrome, grief, gratitude, passion, attitude, fear. What I really love at the end is you have a hack, a check-in, self-talk, and the work. And I felt that was really empowering because you summarize each chapter, but you give us a hack. So ego, redefine ego as a good thing, the center of your being, how to check in, who are you at your core, what has been preventing you from accessing that point. Self-talk, I give myself permission to explore the things I truly desire. The work, practice being vulnerable, treat yourself with compassion and release yourself from judgment. Spend time with yourself behind the layers of complexity and the protective self-made walls. I could go on and on and on, but I just felt that they were so practical, and you intertwine stories of people you've interviewed, many who are top sports people or authors or entrepreneurs. It's a really good read. It's an easy read and it's very personal, and you intertwine like psychology, therapy, but with real life stories and hacks. I love this section, perfectionism, the seeds of perfection. Okay, I think this is an area that we may all struggle with. I know I have over the many years, especially starting out spa blogging before Facebook was a thing and still being here. I noticed there was a desire for perfectionism when Instagram took off, and all of a sudden we went from just posting pretty crap photos actually. And then all of a sudden there was this trend that we had to now produce photos which were like Vogue magazines and the quality of a magazine. But hello, we didn't have the staff of a magazine nor the equipment that the magazines have. But perfectionism was taking off in such a big way, whether that was through looks, hair, body image, whatever it might be. But is that something you feel that a majority of people can be challenged by?
Well, it's interesting that you put it in the context of social media, because I think that is such a big problem for so many people, particularly young girls. As we know, the competition and the expectation to appear a certain way is huge. And when you're a young developing person, even as adults, it's really confronting. And I think in that context, it's absolutely the majority. I think we're all trying to live up to the people that we follow and their best moments that they share with us on Instagram, with all of the face tuning and Photoshop that comes along with that. And if we really saw what was going on every day in people's lives, we wouldn't feel any need to compare ourselves in the way that we do. So I think comparison is a massive part of that sort of perfectionism. But I think as well, for a lot of other people who might have the negative perfectionism that I talk about in the book, it's a really, really difficult thing, because for a lot of people, you think perfectionism could be a good thing. You know, it sounds really good. Oh, you're always striving to be your best and you want to do your best and be your best. But it's really so much more sinister than that. It can be so detrimental to your mental health. And that feeling like you've always got to do everything to the utmost best of your ability can mean that maybe you don't actually get things done. You might not actually complete the task because it's not perfect in your eyes. And that in itself can weigh on you and mean that you're not going to have a rosy outlook on life. So what I talk about in the book is that kind of phrase that we've all heard before, which is done is better than perfect. So if we can all practice a little bit, just send the email, just get it in, just do the thing and don't stress about it. You know, we can always finesse it later. We can always make it better later, but just trying to get into the habit of just getting it done rather than making it perfect will make all of us happier. So I guess you could apply it to social media too. Does it have to be the absolute best photo ever? I was at a book signing yesterday and a photo was posted and I didn't love it, I have to be honest. You know, I'm seriously pregnant and I was just like, you know, it's not my best photo, but who cares? You know, it's so lovely to have been allowed to go in and sign books in the pandemic, and who cares? Let's just post it. All good.
I love that philosophy that you have. Done is better than perfect. And I love your attitude to that photo, because I can resonate with this too. It was last Sunday I was doing a live with the Spirit Girl community on Instagram and chatting about the books and everything going on. I brought in Michael, who is from Texas, America. He takes a photo of us. I don't know my face. I wasn't smiling. I didn't even know the photo was happening. I have no makeup. I thought, you know what? Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? We can't have this staged life where we've got the perfect makeup, hair, and all of that going on.
Yeah.
There was something I felt in your book everyone could benefit from, the area of self-esteem. What is self-esteem?
Look, it's about how we regard ourselves. And this is something I feel quite passionate about, particularly because I work with a lot of young people, my therapy job. And we're in such a strange time in terms of the female image. There's so much cultivation of the image, from the face to the body, and the people that young people are looking up to. I say young people, I sound so old. I'm almost 40.
I know, you know, I'm only 44. Young people are only like 20.
Kids these days. I think it's a harder time than ever, because growing up in the 80s and the 90s, we didn't have this to worry about. We had Dolly magazine and Girlfriend magazine. That's where we would see pretty young girls. That's where we would compare our bodies. But that would come out once a month. Or you could ignore the magazine stand at the newsagent and not have it infiltrate the way that it does now. So I think it's such a hard time for young people and for parents of young people, how to monitor that and how to support that and how to help grow a healthy self-esteem in young people, but so that they're having that regard for themselves, where they're seeing all of the things about them that are wonderful and amazing and how they contribute to the world in their own beautiful, unique way. So again, it comes back to that comparison, finding ways to let go of what other people are doing, what other people look like, what other people are achieving, and finding the ways to celebrate your own successes and your own wonderful uniqueness. We all say that we're all unique and it's wonderful and we need to just celebrate that, but it's really hard to apply that sometimes. So I think filtering out all of that noise on social media, finding people that celebrate the body positivity or women using their brains in magnificent ways, people who write incredible things or create beautiful things, those are the people we should be looking at and aspiring to be, rather than the influencers in the Gold Coast who've got the most filler and the best filters.
It's fascinating you should say that, because I grew up in the 70s, 80s. And back then, my influence was like Oprah Winfrey. You couldn't get anyone better than that as a female. And then you have all of these incredible authors on the show. About Dolly, realistically, whilst the girls were quite thin, size 8, they were all natural. I don't remember one young Aussie girl at the time having any cosmetic work. And I grew up in the era where the media really didn't like celebrities who got cosmetics work, and it used to be this big public shaming. They would literally rip shreds off any celebrity that they could figure out, even if they had a slight little nose job. They used to go, oh, we found this photo and we think she's had a nose job. So it was a big no-no if they got caught out changing their looks. And then they went into showing all the bad cosmetic surgery. But fast forward now to this new era, there are brands who are promoting this look and media promoting this image in order to improve mental health for every age, and especially the younger generation. And for young girls, we need a massive shift where brands go, what does this person actually contribute to the community? Are they making a difference? Is this all about just getting cosmetic work and that's the message? We really need a big shift, reverting back to girls being their organic, natural self as they were born. And I think that could help a lot with eating disorders and mental health. So if you're a brand owner, shout out to you, or journalist or whatever. Go for the natural look, because we need more of a balanced approach.
Absolutely.
You give so much. You have a lot on your plate. You juggle motherhood. You juggle a podcast show, which kudos to you. I know what goes on behind the scenes with technology and trying to get people at a certain time to be your guests. You also then are a therapist. You've been in Melbourne. Melbourne has been in the world's biggest lockdown in history. And I felt at times you were completely on another planet. I used to live in Port Melbourne. What I saw coming out of Melbourne, I was like, what country are those people in again?
We felt like
they're just totally different world. But how do you take care of yourself, and what are some of your self-care rituals?
Well, in lockdown, unfortunately, like so many other people, I was drinking a gin at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon was about all you could look forward to, when every single day is the same inside the same 4 walls. But that's not great. What really works for me is exercise. I find that is one of the only things that really helps me to blow off that overwhelm when I'm feeling really stressed, like the kids are all too much and it's all too hard. It's exercise. But unfortunately, I go through peaks and troughs with that. When I'm exercising, I'm doing Pilates and I'm going for walks and I'm doing the 28 by Sam Wood program at home. Shout out to Sam. He's been a lovely, great supporter. And that's been amazing. And then I'll go through phases where then I drop off on the exercise, and then I find myself becoming more stressed and anxious and overwhelmed again. And then I have to remember, oh yeah, I need to exercise. But apart from that, also spending time with people I love, and also trying to find time on your own. But for me, I'm someone that really recharges with some time on my own. So I love reading. I watch all the crappy housewives shows. And as a parent, there's not much couch time to be had. You know, there's a small window when the kids are in bed, but then I've got to share the TV with my partner. So we've got to find something that we'll both be happy watching. I guess finding ways to have that downtime and time when you're not focusing on anything else except just kind of zoning out. And I feel like that helps me quite a lot.
Wow. And you must be so good at managing your time, fitting in your podcast, fitting in this book. Where did you find the time to write the book?
Well, thankfully, I work at a school in my counselling job, and my boss was incredibly supportive, and she gave me long service leave out of nowhere. I didn't have to give any notice or anything. I mean, I think with a week or two's notice, she was happy to support that. So that gave me 3 extra days a week to focus on the writing. And if I hadn't had that support, there's definitely no way I could have written the book. I was able to just power through that in about 8 to 10 weeks. And then the book was written.
Wow. And you touch on in your book about imposter syndrome, but also when you got approached to write this book, you're like, me write a book?
Yes, totally. I honestly kept feeling like someone was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, excuse me, ma'am, you're at the wrong table. They meant to be talking to someone else. It's such a funny thing, imposter syndrome. I had a really short deadline, like just a few months. So having that short deadline meant I just had to get it done, and I had to get out of my own way and not overthink it too much and not think that I'm the complete fraud that imposter syndrome likes to tell us that we are.
I love how you opened up about that. So what is your hope now for your newfound book readers or audio book listeners?
That's right. Yes, the audiobook has just come out, so you can get that wherever you get your audiobooks from. But my hope is really just to connect with people. The book, it's not prescriptive, it's not a textbook, it's just really about connection and normalizing some of the things that might feel scary. And sometimes we might feel like we're the only person experiencing these things, like anxiety or imposter syndrome. And like you say, a lot of these things go on secretly in our minds that we don't often share them out loud. So I hope that readers of the book can feel a big warm hug, and that they're not alone, and that there are some simple and practical strategies for moving through some of these scary things, and that they don't have to be so scary. Change doesn't have to be as scary as we think it's going to be. If my story or the stories of the people that I've shared in the book resonate with people, then that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, well, it's such a beautiful book. It really is a hug in a book. And it's a beautiful way to talk about embracing change in such a positive way, because we have had 2 really intense years of our lives completely changing, our way of life, our lifestyle. It's been nothing like the norm. And it's so interesting, when my mum saw the book title, she loved the book title and she said, oh, that looks like such an interesting book. And then had the book, I was actually reading it while I was waiting for my takeaway coffee. Mind you, I was parked in the parked lane, everyone. I wasn't driving the car reading the book. The barista goes, embracing change. That looks like a good book. I said, you know what, when I'm finished, how about I give you this book to read?
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm going to give this book to my barista.
Amazing.
Who's actually from Canada. And I think that's what I love about books. It really connects you with other people. It's just such a beautiful feel-good thing. I would totally recommend everybody grabbing a copy of Embracing Change by Jana Firestone. It is part of our Spirit Girl book club. So when you do get your copy, hashtag Jana Firestone, hashtag Spirit Girl book club, just hashtag books, book club,
Amazing.
self-help books, all that jazz. And let's get this book out there to share with as many people as we can to help them to embrace change, adjust, transition, and adapt, and just to feel good from within. How can we stay in touch with you now after the podcast show?
Oh, probably Instagram's the best, at the Curious Life Podcast. I'm on Facebook as well. They're sort of connected, but I would say Instagram's probably the way to go, or you can jump onto the website, which is thecuriouslife.net. And I love interacting with people and hearing their stories and, like I said, making connections. So I'd love to hear from as many of your listeners as possible. That would be amazing.
Before I say goodbye, I want to wish you all the best with baby number 3. It sounds like it's not too far away. You've just delivered a baby as in the book, because every author tells me having a book and launching the book is like bringing a baby to the world. So you've launched your book and you're having a baby. And you got 2 kids, podcast show and therapist. Oh my goodness. But I really hope it all goes well. Do you know what you're
Thank you. I do. It's another boy. So I'm going to be a boy mum all the way around.
Yeah. And have you got a name chosen yet, or you're going to wait?
I do not. It's absolutely crazy. We have just over 2 weeks to go with no name. So if anyone has suggestions, but if it's within the next 2 weeks, I am so ready for name suggestions.
Well, I think you credit Sam a lot, or you talk about him getting you on the right track for exercise. We'll put his name in the ring.
My dad really is keen on Sam. He loves that name and he keeps pushing it. So you never know.
Thank you again, Jana. I'm really super grateful to be able to have the time to meet you and
thank you.
Your book. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Yvette. Thank you for all your support. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I've really loved it.
And I just want to thank all of you for tuning into the SPAITGIRL podcast show. And I really hope that you've learnt a lot from Jana and that you feel inspired and empowered to embrace change. Be sure to subscribe, to leave a 5-star rating and review, and to tell someone you love to. And together, let's feel good from within. This podcast show is tributed to Jana's mum, who'd be super proud that she's now become an author.